Good afternoon. I don't know. There we go. Happy Boxing Day, and Michigan has a new coach, a new football coach, Habemus Redem. I think that's Latin for we have a coach. Hope you had a lovely Christmas. We are ready to get things underway here the day after Christmas. It took Michigan 16 days, but they have landed on Kyle Wittingham as their next head coach, Michigan football. You just got to think it over for yourself. Whether you like it or not, I will tell you what I think. Michigan and Whittingham is quickly assembling his staff. He looks like he has already tabbed his offensive coordinator, and his name is Jason Beck. We will see the entire staff, who he's keeping, and then we will look to see what is going to happen with the transfer portal for the Michigan players that are currently on the team and are preparing for a Wednesday game. It's an afterthought, but they are preparing for a game. Who's going to show up down in Florida, and then who Whittingham will be able to bring in via the transfer portal, knowing that there's going to be some attrition on the current roster. And so there we are. And here it is. I don't think that there was a home run hire. I think that Kalen DeBoer sounded like one, but there were plenty of things to look at Kalen DeBoer and say, pass happy, can't run the ball coach. I like DeBoer. He was my number one choice, but that made people uneasy. Dillingham there at Arizona State, a little wet behind the ears. Had the great season, one great season, awesome. Arizona State took him to the college football playoff. He's the next Dusty May. He had that label put on him. Didn't know where the state of Michigan was on a map, and liked the warm weather and wanted to be the Mark Few of college football. And we don't know, we know that he said that Michigan didn't hire him. And so you move on where Whittingham fit in, what Michigan really wanted. I think what I believe is that Michigan really did want Kalen DeBoer, but he lost. I'm sorry. He won and Michigan lost. That's a big deal. Michigan lost out on DeBoer when Alabama beat Oklahoma. We had thought that was going to be the case, and that was the case. Michigan may have said, okay, we're going to stand by you no matter what. And DeBoer's agent might have said, yep, we're hanging in there. But, Michigan, when you started, I don't know if it was yesterday, if you watched this podcast on Wednesday, my brain was fried on thinking that Michigan was going to wait all the way to January the 1st. And then, Indiana is favored to beat Alabama, but were they really going to wait all the way to January 1st to see what if they won? Then they're going to be sitting there with their you-know-what in their hands, and then they're going to have to go to whoever was their second choice, and it's Kyle Wittingham. But that's what they would have had to done. That's what they would have had to do. You can ask the question, why didn't they do this a couple of days ago? Why didn't they do this last Saturday? Because it was last Friday that Bama lost. And that's a fair question. That's definitely a fair question. You wouldn't have had to go through the dog and pony show that Biff went out there and, stumping for the job, and then Biff going on podcast, tearing down Michigan. Wouldn't have had to deal with that. Maybe he would have, because he would have still been the interim coach. Maybe he'd have been on there, running his mouth like he did. And I didn't have a problem I know people didn't like it, and he was harsh towards Michigan. And I was like, okay, you got to retain the players. But then a little bit over the top when he was going on a Texas pod, crying and asking people to pray for whatever he was doing there. That was too much for with Biff for me. But that's, I don't know, water under the bridge. Biff, and now Michigan has their next head coach. So DeBoer wasn't a home run. Dillingham, you might have thought was a home run. Okay. But so then you get to that tier two. That's the way I look at it. There was a tier two, and Whittingham was in the tier two. You could say, boy, I really like Todd Monken more. When I look at his resume, Midwest ties, he had some head coaching experience. He's worked with a hell of a lot of quarterbacks, offensive coordinator, big time offensive mind that way. And, I see that attraction. And actually, if I was ranking them out of all of the coaches, I would have gone DeBoer and Dillingham, and then I would have put Monken in front of Whittingham. But then there's Whittingham, and that doesn't mean that that I don't like him or don't think he's going to succeed. I'm just taking it as it approached, as it all fell into place, and as the names came out there. And there's always the caveat, and people don't. I don't know how much they admit this. We dig in as fans or whoever else about who you like and why, and yet we don't know about the meetings that these guys have. And if you're able to look somebody in the eye, even on a Zoom like I am now, and you're talking with them face to face, you get a lot better idea of the connection and whether you're going to be on the same page. I don't know, maybe all of these guys, have that, little spark, little twinkle in their eye or whatever else, but that's going to be the thing that puts you over the top when you have candidates and you look at them. It's when you're talking with them and how they line up with you and what you're looking for, and just how that interview goes. So the knock on Whittingham, that he's, I say almost 70, 66 years old. Mostly when you hear about what would your ideal coach be, you say, well, I want a young, hot, proven coach. That's why people like Dillingham. You can say proven, he went to the 1 year playoff, but people like the young, hot coach. I get that, because you feel like it wasn't so long ago that it was just, you would look towards veteran coaches, older coaches, and you'd say, you got to have that. You can't just take some young whippersnapper. And then the Rams hired Sean McVay, and that just brought a landslide of McVay copycats. Let's get somebody like McVay. And it's the trend. That's what people want. But you quickly, when you are a Michigan fan or you're a college football fan, you look at the list of elder statesmen in college football, and Bill Belichick is 73, and Kirk Ferentz is 70, Keeler at Temple 66, and there's Kyle Wittingham. So he's the third oldest coach, fourth, if we're really lining it up and going when you were, and that's what you do, I guess. So he's the fourth when you sit down there. But if I was sitting here and somehow Michigan had made a big offer to Cignetti, and he was going to be the next Michigan coach, there'd be a party. He's the best coach in college football. Michigan was able to land him. Oh, wait, he's 64 years old. So if 64 years old and you'd be throwing a party for Cignetti, Whittingham's only 2 years older, 18 months, if you're adding it up when you go through that. So that might make you feel a little bit better. I feel better about it. If Cignetti didn't happen at Indiana, if he wasn't here, and I was looking at the rest of this and saying, Belichick, Ferentz, Rich Rod, Leopold, no, but Signetti. I think that should make you feel better if you're a Michigan fan. Most Michigan fans that are commenting in on this job that I've seen over the last 24 or 48 hours are correctly saying that let's wait and see what the staff looks like. And yeah, can you assemble a staff that you're going to look at and say, okay, you got Whittingham, but is he going to have a staff that you look at and say that is a staff, that is something that he's really got that's going to turn some heads. We're going to see how that falls into place, lands into place, and then we'll see what kind of player retention they get. So there it is with Whittingham, and the coaching search after 16 days lands on Kyle Wittingham, the 66-year-old coach who spent his entire life is in coaching and playing in Utah. What does that matter? Well, most people that were really high on Dillingham didn't think it mattered too much that he didn't know where the state of Michigan was, and that Whittingham, yeah, he coached at Michigan, came in, brought his Utah team in, and won at Michigan Stadium. 21 years as the head coach at Utah. 21 years there at Utah, and then he played at BYU. Oh, so this is a Mormon coach coming in. Got a however you feel about the Mountain West. 2008, he was undefeated in 2008. Got 2 Pac-12 titles. Coach of the Year in 2008. Bobby Dodd, Coach of the Year in 2019. Got those things, and there's that notable season in 08. 13-0 and beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. So he's got that going for him. How he connects when you don't have to win a press conference, but he's been in for, he understands how to connect. We'll see how that works when he, takes to the podium and what he has to say, but he's a total outsider. He's a total outsider, and he's coming in, and Rich Rodriguez was a big time outsider, and I like the idea of breaking away, that it didn't have to be a Michigan man after Lloyd Carr, and you go out and get someone. And Rodriguez was promised, this spread offense and everything else, but Rich Rod, there was a lot of reasons that it didn't work out with Rich Rod. One was that Rich Rod didn't get the defensive coordinator, and he seemed like he had no interest in defense or special teams, just offense. He couldn't land a quarterback, and so he got behind the 8 ball. And then the former players in Michigan at large did not support Rich Rodriguez. There was they worked against him. They did not want Rich Rodriguez to succeed. I don't think we're going to have that. You can't have that. Former players are interesting. Every new coach that comes in, you have as a fan, but former players, they want to be, whether it's involved in being able to go to certain functions, be welcomed back, whether it's being on the sideline or reunions and things. What's the coach going to do in terms of the former players? Rodriguez, and I don't know, Jim Harbaugh, you could hit a half dozen people that say, Jim was great with the former players. You get a half dozen saying, Harbaugh didn't care any of that. But I'm interested to see how Whittingham does with the former players. I'm going to take some feedback here. It's not a home run hire, but that doesn't mean he can't succeed. We will make our guesses, and then I would like to see and what he has to say, what his staff is going to look like, and how many players are going to end up staying around here. If who's his general manager going to be? Who, how NIL is going to work? Are people going to be dropping money for Whittingham? These are you could say, I hate Whittingham, and yet behind the scenes, they could be pulling up money saying, we're going to give Whittingham more money than anyone else in the Big Ten so he can be competitive or at least be right up with everyone else. We're going to match whatever Ohio State is spending on their roster. Michigan with Whittingham, they are going to spend that much. That's I'd say more than half the battle. I know that you have to deal with that as a Michigan fan. For 20 or 30 years, you always said, no, it's about getting your recruits and developing. It's not just bringing in the 5 stars. Well, Michigan really wasn't getting the very top players because the other teams were paying them. Now that is a level playing field with the top teams. It's still, you have to develop them. It's not just like bringing in a 5-star and just throwing them out there. You still have to be able to develop them, but being able to get them, I'm interested in that. And I think we're going to know what's he going to be able to do. The transfer portal, who's he bringing? Because there's going to be guys that you're going to be like, wow, didn't want to see that coming. Didn't want that guy to leave. But then who's he going to bring in? So not a home run hire, but that doesn't mean he can't succeed. 2, how much is Michigan going to spend in his first year? Very important. His staff and then player retention. Tough schedule next year. I'm not automatically chalking Michigan up for 4 losses like a lot of other people. That's a knee jerk, especially when you don't even know who the quarterback's going to be for Michigan next year. Not yet. Well, we'll see about that part. Let's take some feedback. That's what I have to say. That's where I'm at with Whittingham. Derek loves the hire for keeping the defensive side of the ball in great shape. Hopefully, he can bring in some good offensive minds to keep the current players and recruits in the fold. Well, he's got Jason Beck as his offensive coordinator. I see the first person that has mentioned on that calls it the Utah Wolverines. It's just a weird thing to think about. Yeah, Utah. I was watching the Red Wings a week or 2 ago, and it was Utah. The hockey club is what I thought. It was Utah Mammoth. And it was weird. I'm glad that they got this done. I wanted DeBoer, but when he lost, I was out. And I mean, I've said it as much that it was over once Alabama won. So I would have liked this better if Michigan would have been making this hire last Saturday. I've had a little bit more time. Now they got to do some real speed dating here, but this is the way that they have approached it. I know there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but Whittingham has been out here and has been there. So whatever they were doing, thinking about, do we really want to go with Monken? Well, the Ravens, are they going to, they're firing their whole staff and everything. He's probably going to be available. It was, I think things were going to get real squirrely hanging out till 24 hours before. If you just talk it through, and I was doing this Wednesday, there's no way that they, and people say, oh, no, he already had a side deal. The side deal, schmide deal. I mean, you can't go to Saturday and then, oh, yeah, what if Alabama wins? Then, oh, yeah, the side deal is next. I didn't like that part. MJ says they hired the guy I wanted. So there you go. John is with it. John says the top recruits will stay. They just got a huge upgrade. We'll see about all that. I don't know. Mason Blue Review contacting all of the recruits as we speak, and they have to make their decision. MJ wants to keep Alford. I think that's probably a consensus opinion. Jack says he's a no-nonsense. He brings a no-nonsense type program. Jack, I would say that's my impression of Whittingham over the years as well. A no-nonsense head coach. Matthew likes it. Ferris says Whittingham can do 10 pull-ups in a row despite his age. Good enough for me. D Original says good, creative, offensive coordinator. Well, is that what Jason Beck is? Let's have a look to see just what Jason Beck, what kind of offensive coordinator background, what his resume looks like. 45 years old. Looks like he's 25, but that's all right. That's okay. He looks that way. Let's have a look. He was OC at Utah, previously OC at New Mexico. I see him wearing a BYU shirt back in 2015. He's from Cali. This is Michigan's new offensive coordinator. Played at the College of Canyons and then went to BYU. So this is like a little Whittingham. He was a quarterback at BYU. This is Michigan's new OC. And then as a coach, after he was done playing at BYU, he was a GA at BYU. Then he went to LSU, Weber State, Simon Fraser. Not familiar. Back to BYU, Virginia, Syracuse, New Mexico. Yeah, this is a real nothing in the Midwest there. Virginia as I got to tell you that Jason Beck as an offensive coordinator is not blowing my socks off here. This is the offensive coordinator you're bringing in. Bryce Underwood looking at that saying, oh, yeah, the Baxter, Jason Beck. Boy, he's going to really develop me. I don't know. So give everybody a chance. Whittingham, but Jason Beck, it's not somebody that's knocking my socks off. MJ says, I really thought they would offer Gillingham the job, but I don't know what happened. Yeah, I don't know what happened either. My what very well could have happened is that Gillingham said, I don't want my wife does not want to go up to the cold weather in Michigan, no matter if you're giving me $15 million or not. I'm perfectly happy here in Arizona, and I want to stay here. This is where I'm from. This is what I like. No amount of money is going to help me when it's 10 below in Michigan. So don't offer me the job because I'm not taking it. Now, a lot of people have taken that Gillingham didn't get the offer in that Ward Manuel is a nincompoop for, what the hell's he doing? And in the short term, I would agree that that's the way it looked for people. Trying to get my camera to zoom back in. It's a little blurry, but it's all right. But in the long run, Ward can come out there and say, yeah, Whittingham was our guy. And I think we know that DeBoer was his guy, but Whittingham could be. He could make a case that he was his second guy. So that's what's going on. Dennis talking about clean up the program. Now they need to can Ward. Yeah, I think a lot of people at this point, you're trying to put if you just want to hear about the good old days with Jim Harbaugh in the championship. You don't want to hear about Connor Stallions and anything anymore. If you can just show Ward the door, he's owed almost $10 million. He signed through 2030. Nobody cares about money, not that's watching this or anything else. And so he gets a nice parting gift, nice golden parachute. And you get a new president, you get a new AD, and people that are, crying about Stallions or anything else saying those guys are all gone. Ward's gone. Jim's gone. Stallions is doing Michigan podcasts. Maybe Sharon Moore will show up on that podcast. There you go. Toby saying he's a massive upgrade from Sharon Moore. Well, I would agree with that. As a head coach, there's more things. How's he going to recruit? But, I think that it's true. But Sharon Moore had some good qualities. But when you're not focused in as the head coach and you're worried about picking up I'm sorry, when you're picking up, I'm sorry, let me start that over. If Sharon Moore would have been focused on the job, of course, he'd still be at the job. But, yeah, he wasn't focused on the job. So, yeah, I would be a better head coach than Sharon Moore from what he was thinking about. So your point is well taken. Smash the Numbers saying Biff is a charlatan. I was wrong. You know what? Biff was put in a tough spot. What Biff needed, and what sometimes there's a lot of coaches that would do well by having someone to help them. I know they get prepped. Hey, this is what's going to be asked about. This is what's going to be asked about. How are you going to answer that? And, they can get ready for that. There's a little bit of that probably should go on with every coach. But a lot of these coaches, they think that, they've made it to a certain spot. They want to say they think they can handle that. Biff, being super successful in business and multi-millionaire and everything else, that, I'll handle it the way I'm going to handle it. I love Michigan, and I'm going to, and he went out there and, he talked a little bit too much. And again, I'll give him a break, but then he just kept going. He was never going to get the job. I got news for you, and I know people, Biff, but he was never getting the job. And when he took over for 2 games and they won, when you never lose a game, Biff's undefeated, he'll be great. And, that it was a pretty good indicator that you really didn't know anything at all about football. If you were talking about, I'm not nothing against you, Smash, or anybody that liked him. I should say, he wasn't a fit. Nobody else was going to hire him. And the only reason Michigan would have, if they thought they were going to keep the players, but, he completely blew the clock management into half of Nebraska. So he wasn't all that when he was out there, and his dress rehearsal wasn't all that hot. Way to get the 12th man on your list. Maybe Texas A&M will give you that moniker. Well, that's overstated, Cowboy. Like I said, to me, he would have been a 4th on my list. Ward could make a case that he's 2nd on his list because, he could say, hey, they didn't even try to get Dillingham. And Dillingham was going to say no anyways, but that's why in the long run, it ended up helping him. Yes. Kyle Wittingham is Michigan's next head coach. Let's take a look at him. There he is in the maize and blue. It kind of looks like Red Berenson in this picture now that I'm looking at it, with his Michigan hat on. 66 years old. Will he have the long flowing salt and pepper hair that he's got over here? Or will he trim it up at Michigan? I would think in his introductory press conference, he would come in looking nice and neat. He's not even shaven here. But I don't care about things like that as much as other people do. But hey, you coming into Michigan, you put a suit and tie on for your, or at least a tie. Or is he just going to walk up there in just a Michigan t-shirt? That's it. Little Flip said, I like it. Little Flip says, good coach, not a long-term answer. Yeah, well, Little Flip, he's 66 years old. I mean, what? Is he going to coach for 10 years? 76? Probably not. Can you get 5 years out of him? Maybe. The way things are now in sports, it used to be, people would say, you better give someone 3 or 4 years. I don't think you get 3 or 4 years anymore. You're lucky if you get 3. Kyle Whittingham's going to get 2 years. If Kyle Wittingham it gets a big time bankroll, big time bag to hand out, and he falls flat on his face for 2 years, he's not going to get a 3rd year. Your average fan says it screams laziness. He says, off the top of my head, Ward has hired one guy that he had to actually negotiate for, Dusty May. Jawan took a promotion. Everyone else has been internal. KW was unemployed. Yeah, I mean, you can say whatever you want. I don't know. If it was lazy. So if he would have hired Monken, it would have not been lazy because he's going to be out of a job. There's reasons not to like Kyle Wittingham. You say, this guy's not a fit to the Midwest. This guy's not a fit to Michigan. And he's 66 years old, and he doesn't know how to recruit. I don't know about that last part. I've seen people say he doesn't embrace recruiting or whatever else is. He's been out in Utah. Come knocking with the Block M, that helps. But how energized is a 66-year-old head coach? Say whatever you want about Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is out doing handstands and changing tires and milking cows and climbing trees. That's what you need as a head coach. You need Jim Harbaugh type energy out on the recruiting trail. So that's a legitimate question. That he's a complete outsider is also legit. And so then you go to his age. Those are 3 things that are very legitimate that you wonder. So that's why it's not a home run hire. That's why it's a wait and see hire. And then everyone that was saying, well, we got to see what his staff, right? That is correct. And his first staff move is to bring another complete outsider that has a pretty light resume as an offensive coordinator. Doesn't mean it can't work, but I'm not blown away by Beck's resume. Maybe in the interview, Beck was, this guy sounds like a young Sean McVay or something. Maybe that's how he'll sound. But I'm looking at it and thinking, that's your offensive coordinator? So that didn't jump out. But it does not scream laziness. I'm going to disagree with you on that. Yes, hired. Let me give you the proper verbiage here on it. Let me see. According to the Maize in Blue review, I'm just looking to see. Yeah, I mean, he is hired. A deal. That's it. Kyle Wittingham. This is not one where, I mean, if you've been following this, there's a little bit of, to me, relief. I had a lovely Christmas yesterday sitting around. I purposely was not dealing with my phone, although I did look a couple times, But I wasn't sitting there the whole time Christmas, but I have been doing that. I've been thinking about it, and then I just kept. Wednesday, I had a little bit of I said whether it was a tantrum or a meltdown thing. What are they really going to go to January 1st when I know that deals are being cut right now, which for players that are in the transfer portal. But if you don't have a coach, this is what I kept saying to myself. This seems like you're putting whoever it's going to be totally behind the eight ball. And even if it's DeBoer, and he had Courtney Morgan, was he calling people trying to make deals? I don't want if it would have been DeBoer, I'm bringing in a guy who's making deals. He's got his GM. And then what if they won the game? That whole thing was making me. It didn't compute with me. Exactly. It's good that they finally got a coach. Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be so harsh about firing Biff. You say, hey, thanks for the trying to hold things together, Biff, and everything else. Oh, you guys appreciate it. I don't know if that, it's not. I know he was the consigliere for Jim Harbaugh, but Biff said it himself that it was a malfunctioning organization. Well, he was part of it, so I would say that Biff knows. I would say that the writing is on the wall. Yes, Michigan can have another coaching search in 2 years. Your average fan. And so even if he has success, I'm okay. I know people, when it came to guys that have NFL aspirations, and true enough, I didn't like January Jim Harbaugh. I liked him all other 11 months, but in January, he was insufferable. As great of a coach as he was, even if I clear everything out, I mean, he was great. But January Jim was a pest. And and he got part of it was like, get the hell out of here, But you didn't. Of course, you didn't want that. No, you wanted Harbaugh back, even at the end, you wanted him back, even with everything else. Of course, you wanted him back. But if Whittingham has success, you might be squeezing. It's not a for sure 4 years. 70 years old used to be some, okay, that's it. But I wouldn't think he'd be. I would think that you'd probably be looking for. Michigan Go Blue says Mikey Keene will probably be starting versus Texas if Bryce leaves. Yeah, I'm going to take a wait and see approach on Underwood before the bowl game. Sharon did a lot of things by doing what he did. Part of it was taking a bowl game that you're excited, it's Michigan football and everything else, has been a complete afterthought. And now with the portal spinning around, everything else, I'm going to be watching the game. But I'm not getting worked up about who's there and who's not and everything else. MJ says Michigan didn't even bother going after exciting hires. Some people might be excited by DeBoer, but nobody exciting was coming after that. Well, who's going to excite you? That's the thing. Who was that exciting coach? They were going for a coach. They needed stability. And I've told people that when you have a coach that was a coordinator and had never been a head coach before, you're going to go to and he's a player. You're going to go to the opposite. It generally works like that in all sports. You get a player's coach, you get a taskmaster. You get a taskmaster, you get a country club. That's it. You get a tall, skinny guy, you get a short, fat guy. This Michigan was going for a coach that had head coaching experience. That's why people that were saying Jesse Minter would get you to the second one. They're also looking for somebody that had no ties for Harbaugh. Whether you like that or not, you can understand why they were going that direction. They're trying to put all of that. Championship was great in the rearview mirror. And Whittingham hits those two things. Guys like Jesse Minter, he had two things going against him. They were never hiring that. So if you wanted some hotshot coordinator, they were getting interviewed. You at least had to have a profile. Now, if we were all sitting around and you said, yeah, but you're cutting down the coaching pool. I get what you're saying there. But you got to think about putting some guy that's standing up there that's never been a head coach before, and they just went through everything with everybody, and now some guy's going to be up here and like, what's your plan, dude? What are you going to do? They got a hard nose coach that's won at Utah. That's it. I'm not throwing a parade. Some people, if you want to throw a parade, throw a parade. I like a parade. I want a championship parade, not a parade for, and I'll call him an outsider. That's what he is. I'm not dogging him, though. Not dogging him. I don't like his offensive coordinator. He's not doing anything for me, but I'm going to give him a chance. Doc didn't like the search. Yeah, well, Doc, if you had eyes for Monken, I get it. If you had eyes for someone else. All of the coaches, there wasn't a home run hire out there. But you're sitting there. John says he was okay with Biff. Yeah, it's okay if you were. I wasn't. Here's YAF again. It's not even from being bad. He's 66. Okay, he's answering the question from way before. No Michigan fan had Todd Monken on their list. Yeah, well, what 22? I would disagree with that. Now, admittedly, there have been tons of names that have been thrown for this. That's what happens when you have a coaching position. Monken wasn't on any of the, initial ones. I'll give you that. And he slipped under my radar because he went against the profile. I knew that Michigan was going to hire a coach that had coaching experience. And when I saw Monken, I thought, nah, he didn't have any head coaching experience. Well, I forgot. He did. 3 years. So that's it. And the part about the players are going to leave, well, we just got to wait and see. It probably. There's probably going to be a dozen players. And then if they're guys that you like, that's going to hurt. There are going to be a few of those. I'm not sitting around naming which ones will be. I don't know yet. You start with Underwood, though. And then you go to Hyder. And then you go to Jordan Marshall. People need to chill on the age. Yeah, so look, I'm not going to talk about, you think it's a disaster. It's okay. Mr. Big Dad is asking, is this official? And I'm saying, yes, it is. It's official. He says, just hire a strong offensive and defensive coordinator. Well, to me, Beck isn't a strong offensive coordinator, so we'll have to see on that. Can they get Courtney Morgan? Sure. If he wants to leave Alabama, he was up here, that would be a positive. Chase likes Jason Beck as an offensive coordinator. LJ is okay with the hire. Here's somebody else calling him hard nose. I wonder if there's somebody out in their media calling him hard nose. Rip, not that excited about the hire. Yeah, I don't think it's one to run out in the streets and be like, oh, Michigan's got it. And I know it's tough for people that they'll have Michigan State and Ohio State fans, the people that you deal with online, they'll trash it and they'll say our coach is better. And they might be right. That's the part. You have to have a wait and see with him. He needs to get support. I don't know about the fans. Fans are going to like him if he wins, of course. But you got to see what kind of staff he's going to put together. Let's see what kind of money that they're going to be able to throw, what kind of recruits they're able to bring in, and which ones they lose. So the initial read, you could say, this sucks. Understandable. Like I'm not saying, oh, great hire. Oh, woo. Would anyone else have hired Whittingham? That's a good question. But take a look at the staff, and then you're looking at it. If it's Michigan, the Utah Wolverines, it's not going to be one. I'm not going to sit around and be saying, "Oh yeah, boy, this guy looks great," and everything that could be turned as, "Oh, Jason Beck, what a great coordinator." It didn't look like a great coordinator to me. So I'm not gonna call him names, and then I'm gonna see how the players respond to him and who they get. Yeah, the DeBoer ship sailed when Alabama won. I don't think the age part matters that much either, except that fans are used to, when you hear about coaching searches, what is the first thing that everybody says? It almost sounds like a cliche. Go out and get a young, hot coach. Well, that's what Michigan tried to do last time. Yeah, how about one that's, got some credentials, more actually, I'm not visiting that again, but yeah, well, maybe they can get a home run higher in, how many ever. We're going to see how Whittingham does. He's not going to be sitting around for very long. Yeah, the 10 pull-up parts, it's great that Whittingham, I've heard people talk about, what kind of shape he's in. He's not playing. But what kind of energy does he have on the recruiting trail? That's what I want to know. I don't know how many pull-ups Harbaugh can do, but I know Harbaugh can, change a tire out in the Indianapolis 500. Then he can, fly across country and he's milking a goat or a cow up in Wisconsin. You milk goat. He's milking a cow up in Wisconsin. He's climbing a tree in Pennsylvania and doing a sleepover. That's what you need to know. What's going on? What kind of energy he has for? And you say, well, he's 66. He's probably got pretty good energy. Or if he can do 10 pull-ups at 66, he's probably got pretty good energy. I've seen a lot of people say this. The potential DC will be the head coach in waiting. He is a rock star in the making. Well, Jason Beck is the offensive coordinator. So now we're turning our attention to the defensive coordinator, and maybe they already have that. I'm just checking. It's just all playing out in real time. Per the Maize and Blue review, it is a done deal. And it sounds like that Jason Beck, let me see, this is from some staffers at Michigan have begun to be notified that Kyle Wittingham is expected to be hired. Michigan is expected to hire a longtime coach. Oh, where's the Jason Beck part? Sorry about that. I thought that I saw that. Oh, here it is. On 3, reporting that Utah offensive coordinator Jason Beck is a name to know to be Michigan's next offensive coordinator. And he is crediting some guy named Matt Zenitz from CBS Sports. But as I sit here and was talking about Beck, I'm looking at this Zenitz, and he says BYU defensive coordinator Jay Hill is expected to be among the names of interest for the Michigan DC job. Hill has a long-standing relationship with Whittingham. So you're getting the Utah OC and potentially the BYU DC. All right, I'll have them. I don't like that. I don't like the OC or the DC. But the OC looks like it's more official than the DC. But this guy out in Utah has been waiting around. He's got the sources. I don't know if they bring an offensive coordinator named Jason Beck from Utah, which is expected, and then they bring a defensive coordinator named Jay Hill. It's not. I'll give you this. Like I said, you give them a chance and everything else. It's not very flashy. They're not winning. For all the people that said they really got to nail the coordinators. All right. Woo! Can they recruit Detroit? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The bringing in a bunch of dudes from Utah or Michigan, I'm just. They're going to bring a bunch of dudes from Utah to be their running backs coach and stuff too. Are they going to change the name to the Michigan Mormons? No, I don't know. Look, let's see what's going to be official with the defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. Whittingham's the head coach, so all right. You like that, he's been there and done that, got a good track record, and a no nonsense. I've seen people calling him hard nose. I agree with a no nonsense, hard, kind of a chiseled chin type coach like that. No BS type coach. So you got that, the defensive minded coach. And then you have his offensive coordinator, who's from Utah as well. And so that doesn't land with me. And I say, well, good luck. Good luck with that. And hopefully their whatever their plan is for who's going to be the quarterback, that Jason Beck and Kyle Wittingham, or these guys going to be, this. It's not. It doesn't excite me, but maybe it excites recruits. Maybe it excites the quarterbacks that are going to be coming into Michigan. Doesn't really have to excite me. I'm not here to get everybody. I'm here to give my impressions on what it's going to be. So if Beck is the guy, good luck. I'll be waiting for him to give me something to get excited about, whether it's on the field or what he says. And then bringing in a defensive coordinator from BYU, hey, you could, I guess you can build a wall around Utah if you're Michigan now, but I don't know what kind of talent is out in Utah. And I mean, really, I know there's all this great high school talent out by the, Grand Tetons or whatever else is out there. I don't even know what's out in Utah. Yellowstone isn't part of Utah in there. Not many football players around that area. The surrounding area, they'll be really ready to invade Wyoming. I don't know. I don't know. The recruiting, maybe you fall back at, Michigan's going to have a big war chest. They could just, stack big bags of cash. And it was always like, if you're Michigan and you got big bags of cash, maybe it doesn't matter if you don't know how to spell Michigan. And you're like, hey, I'm Kyle Wittingham. Michigan, I think, is a nice place. It's it looks like a mitten. And the defensive coordinator's coming in like, yeah, it sounds pretty cool. They got lakes all around. Offensive coordinator's coming in saying, yeah, we don't have to worry. What's it's the state of Michigan. Tom Brady played there. Maybe we'll tell him that when he comes in. Hoosier Mania is saying that Utah's roster is from California. Well, I hope so. I mean, how many players has said? How many guys you got coming in out of Utah? Yellowstone is in Wyoming. I thought it. I'll defer to you. I don't know. I thought there was a part of it that was in Utah, but I mean, I could completely be wrong about that. Here's someone. Let's see what we got here. Some Ohio podcasts. Start with that. I'm already like, can't wait to see this one. Whittingham may be a problem. They were praising Whittingham. Then we hire him. And, well, if you're going to listen to an Ohio podcast, I mean, so we're talking about Ohio State fans doing a podcast. What do you expect? It's the same thing that I would expect that most Michigan podcasts are going to be sitting around saying, oh, it's a good hire. And maybe it is. They could be right about that. It's just in its infancy here. I'm not blown away. That's not even going to begin to say. It doesn't really excite me. The choice of Beck as the offensive coordinator is not exciting to me in the least. But hey, that's my initial read. Maybe in a week, I'll say, I was real hesitant about this back, but this guy's some shooting star, man. I was completely wrong about him. I'm ready to say that. But it's not very exciting that he's also from Utah and is from BYU and is going to have to look on his phone to know where the state of Michigan is. That's not very exciting. But, hey, maybe I'm ready to be proven wrong. I'm not even saying that he's going to be bad. I'm just saying, why? And then it's the same thing with the defensive coordinator. Maybe he's just the strategist that just you give him the talent and he's going to come in from Utah and, oh, man, this is going to be so awesome. Here's a little more Yellowstone information. Zion National Park is in Utah. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. There where the Tetons are at. I'd like to get out to that area. I'll have to ask Jason Beck, and Jason Beck was this. He's a writer for the Tigers too. I'll ask Jay Hill, the potential defensive coordinator. Well, those guys know Utah like the back of their hand. MJ, do you feel better about Whittingham than you did with Sharon when you learned he was being hired? Well, here's the thing about Sharon, and it doesn't do you a lot of good to go back and say anything nice about Sharon when he was hired, but Sharon deserved the job with how it was going. And if you're Michigan, and it really was, with Harbaugh and the culture that they had built for the 3 years before that, winning the Big Ten, culminating in winning a national championship, and keeping what they had going and promoting from within, he deserved it. You want to say that, and I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, they should have had the national search and they should have gone outside. Blowing everything up after you won a national championship when you had everything intact except the head man. It was the right move at the time. People don't like to do that because they just, when they know the facts, it sounds stupid going back, but that's really it was correct at the time. But yeah, it looks foolish now, for sure. Think about Whittingham. You're bringing in a complete outsider that had success in Utah, and he's bringing, the Utah Wolverines with him. That is apparently the Utah gang coming out. The Michigan Mormons. I don't know. Well, we'll see how they're going to do. I don't know. I presume these guys are all going to speak English, so we'll be able to ask them questions. I don't know what goes on out in Utah. Is everybody going to be in bed by 8:00 again? I don't know what's going to happen here. Let's see. This is the Midwest. They're bringing in guys from Utah. We're going to have it's going to be a learning curve for these guys that come in. They're going to have to learn how to drive around here. It's going to be a little bit different than driving out in the desert or whatever it is in Utah. I don't know what it's like out there. Looks beautiful. Hoosier 21 making the point that Cignetti brought a bunch of kids from JMU. How did that work out? Well, I think the comparison to Cignetti and Whittingham is with their age. And that's a good thing. Is Whittingham going to bring a guy from James Madison, the East Coast, so bring in a bunch of guys from Utah? Yeah, you're going to bring. I would expect. Although I don't know, Signetti won a championship there and had his players. Whittingham, what happened there? He was being pushed out, and so there's a little bit of a difference there. Yeah, I'm trying to look at the positives as well. It is hard. He could be. That's why I'm just around rambling on. I'll just give it back. If we're just going to have to see, it's just going to be a wait and see how these guys can connect with the area. Because they're bringing a bunch of guys that don't know anything at all about Ann Arbor, Michigan, the Midwest, and they've got to connect with recruits pretty quick. Now, maybe they'll be armed, and hopefully they will, with a big checkbook, and that's going to rule the day, and it might. I'm going to see what they come up with. That's the thing, saying that I got to wait till next year and let's all be patient. No, we don't have to really do that. Let's see what kind of player retention they get. Let's see what this roster is going to look like. I'm going to have a pretty good idea. What kind of roster you're able to put out there is we're going to know what kind of coach, because that's half the ball game. Because I think you can coach pretty good. If this was the Mountain West, I'd feel pretty good. This is the Pac-12. I feel pretty good, but this is not. So nobody really knows about that. It's these guys' job. They got to connect. Hoosier, you could sit around and maybe that's Ward's burner. I don't know. But I'm like, look, I'm going to state it here. Michigan was in a tough spot. Their number one choice won a ball game, and that put them in a more difficult spot. And they can't wait until next week, which was what it looked like they were going to do. They needed to act. And so from the coaches, from Monken to, well, who was the Final Four? Let's see if we got it here. The Final Four, you had DeBoer. We've been through that and waiting on him. So Whittingham, Monken, and Braum. If any of those three, if we were sitting here and saying that, or I guess the other two, if we were talking about Monken or Braum, I did not get a very good feel that Michigan fans liked him. He was familiar with the area, and he had head coaching experience, and you could make a case for Braum. You can make a case. And, maybe one of those guys excited you a little bit more than the others. And and for Whittingham, his job ahead is to connect with the area and connect with you. And we're going to see how he's going to be able to do that. That's where I'm at. All right. I'll take a few of the feedbacks here. Close it out. Hoosier says recruits usually choose a school because of position coaches, not the head coach. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm going to disagree with that. I think there's a number of reasons that kids will pick a school, but some of them it is. I think it's the whole ball of wax and where they feel comfortable. So I would argue that with you, but I'm not. You can have your own opinion because position coaches are important. J Dubs talking about that he saw somewhere, and that always is going to make me be a little suspicious, that they got a 4 and 5 star that they were recruiting that might flip. Well, yeah, I mean, that's going to be pretty general. I'm sure that Michigan is going to be trying to, because they're going to lose some, they're going to be trying to flip some. Mr. Martini, who we see over on the Maize and Blue Review now, and it's great to see him there. He says you still have to recruit Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana. Can these guys do it? I think it's iffy. Rich Rod couldn't. Yeah, we don't know about that. Matthew is saying, anyone saying this is a great hire is just trying to be nice. This dude was like 8th on the list. If it was so great, why did it take so long? Yeah, I don't know about it being 8th on the list. Like I said, you can make a case that he's 2nd on the list. Now, I think that he's probably 3rd on the list. I think Dillingham and DeBoer were the tops, and I think that Dillingham, made the overtures that he wasn't coming, so Michigan never offered, so they could come up and say, well, this guy was right at the top of our list. I don't know how much that stuff matters. What's going to matter is who this defensive coordinator. If they're bringing in 2 Utah guys along with a head coach, it's going to matter how these guys are going to connect with everyone. Because these guys are coming in here and they need name tags on their chests, and they've got to tell everyone what they're all about. And we'll see if it works. This isn't Utah. Michigan go blue. Important to think about the positives. Dusty May, Yaks, etc. Yeah. See, Curtis says the available list was very slim. Give him several years, and we can have a top 5 coach when he moves on. Yeah, I think that's a positive way to look at it. Utah 6th in total defense. There's another positive. I saw the Jay Smith, the BYU defense is a top 25 unit. Let's see here. I had him at 21. That was just a tweet from the guy that was saying it was going to be that way. Donnie making the point that nobody thought Cignetti was a home run hire at the time. Well, you're right about that. No question. Mr. Big Dad says, I think if they can develop Underwood, Marshall, and Marsh and Heider, Michigan will be all right. Yeah, I would change that. I think you're 100% correct how they're going to develop their star players for sure. But my question is, will they keep Underwood, Marshall, Marsh, and Heider? 1, 2, 3, 4. If they keep, I'm gonna close it out like this with Mr. Big Dad right here. If they keep all 4 of those players, does it really matter if Jason Beck is connecting with me? Because those guys are all offensive players that you're talking about. Beck is the expected offensive coordinator. While that's not official, that's what it looks like. The Utah OC who's coming in, who played at BYU. If Underwood likes him and Marshall likes him and Marsh likes him and Heider likes him, well, that goes a long way. And in fact, that's going to go a long way with me, and it should go a long way with you if you're skeptical of this hire and you're like, what's this guy going to do and everything. Well, he's kept the top players. If he does that, your first impression, first impression is wait and see. Second impression is, what are the players on offense? Well, overall, what do they think? But what are the top stars on offense? You can take any of those 4 guys and say, they keep all 4, you say they're doing something right. So there we go. more coverage over on the Maize and Blue Review. This is going to go into the weekend, and it is we got a bowl game coming up, and we've got a news conference to introduce the new head coach, Kyle Wittingham. We'll be with you on Monday. I'll be back then. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend. And join us. It's a really good time to get in on the Maize and Blue Review. I would say, the coaching search was great, but you get the transfer portal now. Who's leaving, who's coming, what the staff looks like. We're talking about it all day, all night over on the Maize and Blue Review. Go to on3.com, smash the subscribe button. Everybody have a great day again. See you. Let's just see here. Not bad. Brady Marchesi has asked for an NLI release. There's one. Barely knew you, Marchesi. That's all we know. Nobody commented on the mustache. First ever attempt at a mustache. Must look pretty good. Must not look that bad. We'll see.